Welcome 2021. We've been waiting for you and we're so excited for a new year. But what does it all really mean? Today, we're talking about the reality of wedding planning in 2021 and what you should expect. Hi there, I'm Jamie Chang, your destination wedding planning guru and designer of joy at Mangomies Events, the creator of Passport to Joy, the step by step online wedding planning course for couples, and the founder of Let's I Do This, intimate and virtual weddings in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I share real and honest and useful wedding planning tips, tricks, and advice you can use to help make planning your wedding easier and more joyful so you can create a wedding you love. Because let's face it, wedding planning isn't all that easy. In fact, it can be downright painful, and nobody wants that. So we're bringing the joy back to wedding planning. Are you ready? All right, let's do this. Let's dive in here. Now, we've been talking about all kinds of wedding planning, right? Wedding planning during COVID. We've been talking about what to do after you get engaged. We've talked about postponements and virtual weddings and more. By the way, if you haven't checked out our past videos and all of our wedding planning tips, please do so and hit subscribe so you can get access to all the new ones. But today I really want to talk about planning specifically in 2021 because 2021 is going to be kind of a weird and interesting year for many reasons. But let's really start at the beginning here, okay? So first, I know we're all really excited about this new year, the end of 2020, and we just can't wait, right? We can't wait or couldn't wait, I guess I should say, couldn't wait for it to be over and just the hope of this new year and all it could bring, was something we were all looking forward to. But it's now here. We are now in 2021, and it doesn't feel very different, does it? Yes, we have vaccines, which is super great, right? Yes, we have new leadership, which hopefully will also help turn things around. And yes, we know way more about the virus than we did a year ago, which is super helpful. But, while there is hope and while, we have very many reasons to get excited, things haven't really changed. All the same questions still sort of remain. When, where, what, how? So, when will sort of quote unquote normal life and normal weddings sort of resume? When will COVID restrictions no longer be a thing? When will my parents, my family, my friends, and myself be able to get the vaccine? And then once we have the vaccine, will we be safe? While we wait for all of that, do I keep planning or start planning with all of those unknowns? Where can I have my wedding where it's safe and where, the venue won't go out of business? And what happens if my vendors do go out of business? How do I not lose money planning a wedding right now? There are just so many questions, and these are just sort of the tip of the iceberg, really. We're in a new year, which is, once again, great, but unfortunately, that hasn't sort of magically changed the situation. So here's the reality of wedding planning in 2021. And the reality is really just that it's going to be very much similar to 2020. You will still be planning with many unknowns because the future is unknown. And while we all, hope for things to start looking better soon, it is going to take some time. It just is. And so what you need to do is sort of buckle up here, buckle in, because 2021, isn't going to be quite as smooth sailing, perhaps, than we had all hoped. So I want you to know what to expect, and that's what we're going to dive in here today, okay? And the first thing is the fight. Now, outside of sort of the big unknowns and planning a COVID wedding, which, by the way, if you don't know which type of COVID wedding you are planning, definitely check that out on the Passport to Joy site. But outside of those things, we're also dealing with the fight. Now, we went into great detail about the fight in a previous video, which you should check out. But the fight is real. It's a real thing, and it's going to show its ugly face this year. It really is. And it's going to affect sort of any couple planning a wedding right now. Whether you just got engaged, whether you've been engaged for a little bit and have started to plan a little bit, or maybe if you even had to postpone, perhaps last year in 2020 to this year or the following. It doesn't matter. If you're planning a wedding right now, the fight will be something you're going to have to deal with. And you need to be prepared for that. Which leads me to number 2. So that's really vendor changes. Now, just like the wedding industry has been hit hard and dealing with COVID restrictions and unknowns as well. But this is also businesses. So that means changes are sort of coming and have been coming since COVID hit. There is still that fight, but given the still many unknowns, postponements are still happening, as are cancellations. What this really means is that a vendor's schedule and their availability are just constantly shifting, in addition to sort of how many weddings they're willing to take on. Now, this can really work to your advantage in some cases if, you're lucky and it just sort of all the things match, or it could not. But either way, securing a date quickly is going to be just really key and really important. What this also means is that pricing is also shifting a bit as well. So, given the fight and only so much availability, vendors are really charging more for certain time frames or weekend dates. And so what you need to do is just expect that. And if you want to save money, go for a weekday wedding instead or a less desired time of year. And then lastly, when it comes to vendors and the COVID situation and all the changes that are happening, there's also the reality of businesses just closing. And it's really sad. 2020 was a hard year, and many wedding businesses just didn't make it. 2021 will be equally hard, if not maybe potentially harder, because despite the fight and the need for services with the ever-changing schedule, with furloughed workers, with lack of cash flow, and just families to support, 2021 is going to be tough. And as wedding vendors and venues struggle to survive, that will affect you and your wedding. By the way, you should really learn more about why you should support wedding vendors right now and the wedding industry right now, which you can check out in a recent video we did. Okay, now the third thing you want to plan for and expect when it comes to planning in 2021 is COVID restrictions. Now, and I guess I should say COVID restrictions and requirements. Let's clarify that a bit. Because as the virus is still here and we're not near herd immunity, that means any wedding happening right now for at least, the majority of the year is going to have to comply with COVID requirements, COVID restrictions, in order to keep everyone safe. So, just like a 2020 wedding, we're looking at outdoor weddings, small weddings, weddings with masks and social distancing, no food or drink or dancing, or, controlled food, drink, and dancing. All of those things is going to be what you're going to be creating essentially during this year. And what you also want to expect is a virtual component to come into play, potentially, to almost any wedding, because you want to be able to accommodate guests who, can't attend. Then there's also things like, PPE and sanitation and temperature checks and, clear acrylic barriers and household tables and all those fun COVID things will still be needed and will need to be planned for and budgeted for. But there's also number 4 that you're going to have to think about and expect in this year, and that's new requirements. So if you think about it, right, the main difference between 2020 and 2021 really is the vaccine. The vaccine, provides hope for returning to just a world without restrictions, right? But just like there are now sort of requirements around testing and travel, there is talk of future requirements around vaccines, and having a vaccine and being able to prove that in order to travel. Now, while obviously travel is not weddings, I do think there will come a time when new requirements, will be put into place in order to gather. Now, it might be at the state or county level, but it also might not. I could see venues or vendors just requiring it in order to feel safe and protect their teams and make sure everything they can do, they're doing so as to not be a super spreader event because nobody wants that, right? So at some point this year, having the vaccine or a negative test might be required to have a wedding. And that will affect, your venue and your vendors that you hire and you choose. It's going to affect your guests and, whether or not they attend. It's going to potentially add some costs as well to that wedding budget. Now, it's too soon to say sort of exactly, how this will play out. But I do think that this is something that will be coming out this year and something that you should expect. Now, okay, at this point, you might be a little depressed because of everything we just talked about. And I know a lot of it can be kind of a downer, but there is hope. There really is. And it's just going to take a little longer. It's just not going to come quite as swiftly as maybe you had hoped. But here's the bright side. Now you know what to expect. And this will just arm you and help you as you're planning so that your planning is more effective and just more COVID proof. And don't forget that there are tons of wonderful ways to get married now and celebrate right now. Just because we're still dealing with COVID and our good friend Rona, right, doesn't mean you can't have an amazing wedding because you still really, really can. So don't forget that too. And of course, I'm always here to help you. So if you have a question, please leave it in a comment below. And if you liked today's video, please like it. Give us some thumbs up. You can check out our other videos for even more wedding planning tips and hit subscribe so you can get access to all the new ones. And if you're looking for help through the entire wedding planning process, including having access to an advisor, please check out Passport to Joy. You can find all the links below because you deserve to enjoy your engagement, no matter what your budget is and even in the middle of a pandemic. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you next time. Bye!